Welcome back to the Jordan Maxwell Show. You can follow us on Facebook at Jordan Maxwell Show. And follow us on Twitter at JMaxwellShow for any messages. And you can leave posts and messages as well. You can always find the latest shows on our website. But if you want to make sure you don't miss a show, you can subscribe to the Jordan Maxwell Show on iTunes. And the show is always free. So please support the show at no cost to you by doing your online shopping at Amazon. Make sure you click through the Amazon link on our homepage.
I got to tell you what happened to me, and I'm just telling you what happened to me. I can't explain it, but I don't care if you believe me or if you. I don't care, but I'm just telling you what happened to me. One morning, quite a few years ago, it had rained for a couple, 3 days, and I knew that the air would be crystal clear. So I used to go up to Griffith Park Observatory early in the morning and take walks by myself up at Griffith Park at 7 o'clock when they opened. And so I went up there that morning knowing that it had rained for 2 or 3 days and it would be really clear. So I went up by myself and it first opened and there was nobody there but me. And I walked around the outside of Griffith Park and crystal clear. You could see all the way out to San Bernardino. And way out by Diamond Bar, which is, I don't know, 60 miles from here, or 50 miles, whatever it is, at least that, I saw a heavy white cloud. And there were heavy white clouds over L.A. also, heavy white clouds. But out by Diamond Bar, out by San Bernardino, my eye, I don't know what made me do it, but my eye caught a tiny little black spot on a cloud out in the Diamond Bar area. I know that it's at least 60 miles or more to Diamond Bar from here, whatever it is, 50 or 60. And I thought to myself, if I can see something, even as a speck, if I can see it 50 miles away, that must be big, whatever it is, if I can see it that far away. And so I just got transfixed on it. I just stood there for a few minutes and the morning air watching this black spot that was, for some reason, it was fascinating to me. What in the hell am I seeing that far away? And you know, when a 747 or the big jets come over, how slow, you wonder how they're even staying in the air. They're so slow as they're moving over. This black spot was coming toward L.A., and it was not moving slow. This thing was moving. As it passed over, it took only about 6 seconds for it to pass over from when I could see finally what it was. It was going at this speed like this, which is about 3 times or 4 times as fast as a 747 coming in for a landing. This thing was moving. And I'm just telling you what I saw. It was a pterodactyl. It had the huge, enormous scalloped wings, a long, long beak, heavy body with the little feet in the back, huge scalloped wings, but it wasn't flapping the wings at all. It had caught the airstream, and it was just sailing. But as it sailed over Los Angeles, it was close, and the white clouds above it were very thick and heavy, so I could see clearly what it was. As it passed over my head, I saw it was a pterodactyl. And as it went, and the story gets even more stranger. As it went out toward Santa Monica, it was going out toward the ocean. I was mesmerized. I'm seeing a damn pterodactyl. This is not a big bird. This is a dinosaur-sized thing. It was huge. But when it went over, it went out toward Santa Monica, and there was a lot of fog and a heavy cloud layer out over the Pacific. And out of that cloud layer came 5 more pterodactyls. 5 more. One at a time. They came out one at a time out of the cloud layer, out of that heavy cloud fog. One came out, another followed him, another followed that, another, until there were 5 out there. And I counted them as they came out because they were huge. They were very big. And then this one saw them, and it went on the side, and now it made 6. And they went around in a circle, and he joined them. He came in and joined the group. Now there's 6. And then one of them started to go back into the cloud layer. The next one followed, the next one followed, the next one, until they all went back into the cloud layer, and they're gone. And I stood there thinking to myself, nobody is going to believe what I just saw. I cannot goddamn believe I just saw a pterodactyl fly over my head in Los Angeles, and 5 more in the damn cloud. And you're going to go out in public and tell people you saw this?
Oh, they think you're smoking something.
I've got a jacket for you. The arms connect in the back.
Yeah, of course. And but then, at 72 years old, I've come to the place now, I don't give a damn what anybody thinks.
Well, Jordan, this might go full circle here. I mean, maybe you're not seeing something that normal people see. Maybe this is something like Todd was talking about at lunch there, different wavelength.
Something
we can only see so much.
Yeah.
Yep, the third eye.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but I was seeing it with my regular eyes.
Listen, that's the beauty about this, and I think we talked about this and we put this whole show together. This is your show. This is your platform.
Well, let me tell you about my friend Paul Tice. Paul Tice is one of the most fascinating people. I'm going to have him on my show. You think this stuff goes crazy? Wait till Paul Tice comes on. He'll blow your mind.
Great.
Paul Tice is one of the nicest, most polite gentlemen, sweetest person you'll ever want to meet. Very friendly, very helpful, very charming guy. I met Paul over at a cult bookstore over in Pasadena many years ago. And I was in the UFO alien section, and he was interested too. And so we got to talking, and then we found out that he and I were on the same wavelength on everything. So we went out to dinner together. There was a third person with him. There was a second person with him. And from that point on, Paul and I became the best of friends. Well, Paul lived in Glendale, and I had a big 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale. I lived in North Hollywood, so I was always over at Paul's place. He had thousands of reference books. He just had reference books up the gazoo on all kinds of wonderful dark stuff, aliens and UFOs and underground bases and dinosaurs, all great stuff. But his stories of the things that happened to him were just astounding. I loved talking to Paul when he would just, off the top of his head, he'd just tell you about some stuff that happened to him as a kid and just blows my mind. He was telling me, he said, one time, he said, I was, and incidentally, Paul was working for and had a very important position with Disney Studios. I used to go to work with him, and he was a very important man at Disney at one time, and running the computers for the Disney Channel. Very interesting. He worked in a clean room, all air-conditioned clean room, and I used to go with him to work. But Paul began telling me some of his experiences that he had. He said when he was a young kid, he lived back in Massachusetts, and he said one night and one morning, my dog, who used to sleep on the bed with him, began growling low. He wasn't barking, but growling very low. And he said, he woke me up, and I knew he's scared. He's not getting off the bed. He's just growling, and he's looking at the window, at my bedroom window. And he said, I knew he knows there's somebody outside the window, but he's not moving. He was scared. And he said, so I got out of bed, and he said, I'm about 10 years old. And he said, I got out of bed, and I went over to the window, and I've done this too when I was a kid. He said, I went over to the blinds, and I opened it, just barely opened the blinds to know if there was somebody out there that wouldn't see me. Barely opened the blind just to see what's out there. And he said, I have an above-ground plastic pool right by my bedroom window is my pool. And he said right above the pool was a humming sound. I could hear it humming, and when I picked it up to see what it was, he said it was a UFO, a flying saucer, about 1.5 to 2 foot across. It looked about 6 or 8 inches deep in the middle, and it had around the circumference a glass around the middle glass. And he said, and it was right next to my window. And he said, I was looking, and you could see people walking around inside this little tiny saucer. And he said, but the glass, about an inch, it looked to be about an inch. And he said, I could see people walking around inside this, this craft. And some of them, he said, were leaning on a handles, like a handlebars. They were leaning on the window looking out. And he said, but they're little tiny people. They're little people, and this thing is about 1.5 feet across. And he said, I sat there looking, the dog's still growling. And he said, I was looking, and he said, at a little straw, something like a straw, came down and went into the water. They were taking on water. And he said, and then the straw came back up inside, and he said, and it moved toward the window a little bit close, and he said, I could see these little people looking, and he said, I was so much bigger than they, that they probably didn't even see me. And he said, but I watched these little people walking around, and they're pointing and talking to each other, and then he said, this thing started to move up, it was gone. He said, so I saw a little flying saucer, 1.5 to 2 foot across, with little people in it. Well, I talked with Stanton Friedman, who was a nuclear physicist. Dr. Stanton Friedman is a brilliant man, and he's big, and he's very interesting man to talk to about UFOs and aliens and this kind of stuff. And he was saying that there is some kind of a time-space continuum warp between our realities, so that many times, he said, people who have been taken aboard UFOs, aliens take people and they will abduct them. The ships will be like 20 to 30 feet across, but when they walk inside, there's like 2 or 3 football fields wide, enormous inside, just a huge inside. But when you come out, it's only 25 feet across. So he says, somehow or another, they're bending space-time or something, so that it's only 30 feet across, walk inside as big as 2 football fields. And he said, and also the other thing Dr. Stanton Friedman was talking about, he said that when when it opens up for the aliens to come out, some kind of it slides down, like in the movie
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters or whatever, it slides down. And he said, but when it comes back up before they take off, it comes back up and seals itself. So it's like cold welding. Mm-hmm. It's sealed.
It fuses it up where it
seals it completely up. So it's totally sealed. And then when they want to open it, it unseals itself, and then the lattice comes down. So he says, so when they're in space flight, they can't have anything that have doors or anything. It has to seal it. And the way he was explaining how they work, how these UFOs work, and what was the other, that young physicist, I can't remember his name right now, but he was talking about how they do what they do. And how they fly. They create these UFO craft have some kind of generators underneath of them that create a gravitational force field around the craft itself.
Well, it's the magnetic pulsing.
Yeah, pulsing magnetic thing. And then they just aim these generators. They can aim them wherever they want. They aim the generator, and it sucks you into a vortex. But as you're going through the vortex, there's a shield around you, an electrical vortex shield around you, that you go through the air without any friction. So he says, so they can go through the air thousands of miles an hour, no friction, because there's an electrical force field around them that cuts through the air. So I know they're doing that with that high-tech stuff they're doing with...
Well, the stealth technology.
The stealth technology, that's it, stealth technology. And so I was amazed at some of those stories that Paul came up with. The other one that just blew me away was he said that he was Paul Tice. He owns a company down in San Diego called Booktree Publishing. So give him a call. It's called Booktree Publishing, San Diego. He publishes all kinds of arcane, strange books on the occult and religion and philosophy, etc. Very successful publisher. But he was telling me also that when he got out of college back east, Massachusetts, he said, when I got out of college, I got a job working for a television, radio, TV station. And he said, my job was to work at a relay station, which was up in the mountain, so that the main station in his town would beam a signal up to the relay station. Then he would take that signal and relay it to the next town over the mountain. And so it's a relay station. So he says, so my job was like a fireman's job. You go up for 4 days, you're off for 3. Then you go up for 3 days, you're off for 4. But when you go up there, you're by yourself. and you're by yourself for the 4 days until your relief comes. And he said, so every day, my job was to, every hour or so, I had to walk around the inside of the station and make sure everything was working right. And if anything goes wrong, I had to fix it. That's all. That was my job. And he says, so a very cushy job. Every hour or so, I just go around, make sure everything's working right, and then go fix yourself something to eat and watch TV. And he says, so it's a very nice, cushy job. And he said, but one day, one evening, one afternoon, when the sun was just about gone down, but it's still light out, he said the station had, they had cleared off a circular area and cleaned it off up in the mountains. They had cleaned off the circular area and built high security fence around it, and the station was in the middle. One afternoon, he said, my bed was at the back door, and we had this big, huge security back door with the glass and the metal and the glass. And he said, so I was laying there, I'd just done my rounds, and I was laying there reading, and the sun hadn't gone down, the sun had gone down, but it's still light out. And he said, I'm laying there reading, look at the sky through the window, and he said, I look up, and there is Bigfoot. There is a man, you could tell it's a man, but he had the face of a dog. And it was red color hair, reddish hair. But he said he had the face of a man, but it was half dog, half man. And he said, I was frightened to death when I saw this thing because it was looking at all the lights on the equipment. And it was, it was mesmerized by all the lights on the equipment, and it didn't see me right here at the door. And he says, I'm looking at him, and he's looking at the stuff, and he said, all I could think of was, did I lock the back door? And whatever the answer is, it's too late now, good or bad. Because if you move, he's going to see you. And he said that he started to open the door, but the door was locked. He said, thank God, the door was locked. And he said, but when he started to open the door, he pulled on it, and he said he wasn't heavily built. He was very...
But he bent the door handle.
Yeah, and he said you could see the metal door being pulled. He said you could see the metal door.
Whereabouts was the station? Was this here?
It was up in the mountains in Massachusetts. Up in the mountain area of Massachusetts. And he said, but you could see the door being pulled when he was pulling it. So this thing was not very heavily built, but God damn, the thing was strong. It's bending a metal door, pulling on it. And he says, I could see the door was and thank God the thing was locked. And he says, so I just watched him. I didn't see a thing, didn't move. And he said he finally looked down. When he looked down, he saw me, and he jumped back. And he said when he jumped back, I knew I scared him, so I jumped up like I was going to get him. And it scared him. He said, that's what I wanted to do. And he said, so I scared him, and he turned around and ran. And he said, I watched him run. And he ran like a gazelle. He took one step and sailed into the air, and then came down and took another step, and took 3 steps, and he went over the fence. The last step was 1 step, and he went over the high security fence and back down, and he's gone into the forest. He says this thing was thinly built, covered with reddish hair, had a man's face, but is also part dog. And he said it was thinly built, and he said, I don't know what it was, but I know what I saw. And so he says, so when I hear about wolfmen or these Bigfoot or Yetis or whatever, I don't know what it was I saw, but this thing was not of this world. So
unbelievable.
Incredible stuff going on all around us. I have an Armenian friend of mine, an older man, almost ready to retire. He's a very well-to-do Armenian businessman here in Los Angeles, dear friend of mine. When I first met him many years ago, he was very interested in UFOs and aliens, but he's a very successful real estate financer and got a big company, a big corporation. And so I would go out with him to lunch or whatever, and he would ask me about the aliens and UFOs and all that. And I often thought, where does a businessman running a big corporation and all these people working for him, where does he get off at worrying about aliens and UFOs? And so about a year ago, I was over at his office. He called me, and I went over, and we sitting talking. And I said to him, I said, why are you so interested in the alien stuff? And he said, because I saw one. He said, my friend and I, every year, we go up my Magic Mountain up here off the 5 freeway. We go to Magic Mountain, and we get off on the Magic Mountain off-ramp, and we go, instead of going to Magic Mountain, we go into the mountains. And he said, there's a nice road going up into the mountains, and if you go far enough, you'll end up in, what is it, Palmdale. Mm-hmm. If you go far enough, you'll hit the 14. And he said, so we drive up this highway, this street by Magic Mountain, right here in north of L.A., Magic Mountain. And he said, we drove up there one morning, and we camped out for 2 or 3 days. We were hunting up there. And he said, and one morning we were coming back toward Magic Mountain down the road, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And he said, and I was driving, my friend's in the passenger seat, and we saw somebody walking along the side of the road away from us on our side, with his back to us. And he said, we could tell from even far away he's wearing some kind of a silver suit. And he says, as we pulled in behind this guy, we slowed down because it didn't look human. And he said, this thing was very tall, thinly built, with a bubble head, and it was wearing some kind of a silver garment. And he said, but its arms and legs, it was arms and fingers were very long. And he said, but the thing we noticed about it, the first thing, was that it had hoofs. It didn't have feet. It had a hoof like a goat.
They call them the grays?
I don't know what it was, but he said, all I know is this thing had hoofs, not feet. And it was walking on 2 legs, hoofs, and it was a long, thinly built creature with a bubble head and long hands and long arms and fingers. And he said that as we pulled up behind it, we trolled along behind it very slowly, watching him walk. And he said, and then we stopped. We stopped because when we stopped, he turned around and walked in front of the car as if to challenge you to go any further. He walked in front of the car and stood looking at us. And he said, this thing was not of this world. It had a bubble head. It was grayish skin, long, thin arms and fingers, had a hoofs for feet. And he said, this thing stared at us, and we're staring at him in the car, looking at him, and he's looking at us. And he said, we didn't know what to do. We just sit quiet and look at him. And he said, then he finally decided we're not a threat, so he started to walk away. And he said he walked like a goat on hoofs. And he said he walked across the street and stopped and looked back at us for a few moments, and we just sat there looking at him. He turned around and walked back into the brush, and he's gone. So I asked him, I said, do you know where that is? He said, I will never forget. I'll tell you exactly where it is. So I wanted to talk to my dear friend, Bill Burns, who publishes the UFO magazine. And Bill has said, anytime you hear of any good things like that, you want a photographer, let me know. We'll go out. And I thought to myself, so I asked my Armenian friend, he said, yeah, if you want to. If you want to go out there, bring your cameras, and I'll show you where he is, and we can go back into the woods. I don't know what the hell you're going to find back there. But when you talk about aliens and UFO aliens, they're here. He said, I saw one. Well, this is a very, very well-grounded, intelligent businessman who's just telling me about his experience. So there's no doubt in my mind we have aliens, right here with us, even in Los Angeles. There's a lot of stuff that's going on right here that nobody knows anything about.
Oh, anybody could just blend right in.
Obviously. And they're smarter than we are. There's been a lot of talk, even as far back as 1936. There was a lot of talk going on back then about aliens living under Los Angeles, under the tunnels in L.A. There's a whole world of caverns and caves and places under Los Angeles, as there is in probably in many big cities. But there's a whole city.
Oh, yeah. Before the show, we were talking about how that military base that's not far from here, you'll see the air vents.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That
and
there
it's
are
obvious
huge
that's
bases
what these massive bases underground that are used for who knows what.
That's exactly right.
So these underground cities and
One of the largest underground facilities on the earth is a place called Pine Gap, Australia. It's in the exact middle of Australia. In the exact middle of Australia is a little town called Alice Springs. And under Alice Springs, way down a mile or so down under Alice Springs, is a city, a whole city that the United States Air Force, the CIA, Britain, I think Germany is involved in it too, have a base that is so large. They have a downtown, they have shopping. I heard that they have electric cars down there. It's a huge operation, military city underground in Alice Springs, which is in the middle of Australia, about a mile down. I heard that the Japanese put in fiber optics, heavy, big fiber optics, so that in the morning when the sun comes up, they cut out the harmful rays of the sun, but so that people could get up and go to work down there, they get the sunlight. The sunlight comes in, and they can get up and go to work. And I heard that they have electric cars. They raise their own food down there. This is in Alice Springs, Australia. It's called Pine Gap. So go on the web and go look up the word Pine Gap, Australia. There's some really strange stuff going on there.
Oh, well, you look at even the talk and discussion at Denver's airport is a complete underground city. And you walk through the airport.
I got news for you on that one.
Yeah.
I had a lady who was working working on the Denver airport when it was first being done, and she was working downstairs under the airport, and she videotaped for about a half-hour videotape of all the construction going on under the Denver airport when it was being done.
It's supposed to be a mega city under there.
It's a huge operation going on underground, incredibly large, huge, big 16-wheelers, big double semi-tractor trailers, tractor trucks bringing in supplies from all over. So she made me a copy. I still have a copy of it. I still have a DVD of all the original construction when they were actually building the place, what they were building. And I mean, some of that stuff is really interesting.
Well, look at the symbolism throughout the airport when you walk through the airport.
Oh, God, the place is crawling with it.
Yeah. I mean, all the different symbols of, almost the, Armageddon.
And people dying and chains and concentration camps and children dying and blood all over. I don't know what the hell they're trying to tell you, but it's scary, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bizarre.
They're all big time bizarre.
Yeah.
So, but there's, like I said, there's so many interesting things that I've been privy to hear and to see with my own eyes. So I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. I'm just fascinated with the world that's hidden. I talked to you before about the books of Charles Fort. You really need to get that book. It's called The Complete Works of Charles Fort. And I told you about one of the examples of the kind of thing he talked about, the rocks falling out of the air. Mm-hmm. Another one that my girlfriend's father told me about when he gave me the book that caught my attention. And since then, I have heard I've read more about it in other publications. But in England, back in the 1890s, there was it snowed very heavy in London. And in the London newspapers the next day, there was a phenomena that happened in London that has never been explained by anyone, because no one can explain it. But there were little small footprints, little prints in the snow, and they had sunk about an inch into the snow, which would tell you how much this creature would have weighed. But they're little footprints that went straight from one side of London to the other side of London, a big city. It went straight across London. But what made it even more interesting is that wherever it was a straight laser line straight across, wherever it would go, it would not go around an obstacle, it'd go over it. So if it came to a house, it would go up the house, walk across the window, walk under the eave, walk across the side, come back down and walk. It went a straight line across London, straight as an arrow, flawlessly straight, no matter what was in its way. all these little footprints, all the way across London, all the way across the city. And nobody ever found out what in the hell made these little footprints across London in the snow. So I'm just saying that, the world is not what you think it is.
Well, that's for sure. That's a given.
The world is not what you think it is. There's something going on here that I have been privy to see all my life. I've been privileged to see things and hear things and be made aware of knowledge that most people don't even know exists. From commerce to banking to religion to the occult sciences to the my real favorite and my love, of course, is ancient religions. But I'm absolutely fascinated with the world of the UFO, the aliens, because there's so much going on that we've never been told.
Do you think a lot of it is all intertwined, with the religion and...
oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
It's all one ball of wax. That's what this whole thing I was going to tell you about right here. This is at least a 90-minute presentation here. I've done this before. So there's a subject I'm very interested in the Bible in relation to UFOs and aliens. As a matter of fact, in the book of Job 26:5, I think it is, Job 26 chapter, I think it's 26:5. I should have photocopied it and brought it with me. But in the book of Job, it talks about something called the Rephium, R-E-M-P-H-E-M, I think it is, Rephium, something like that. I'll show it to you the next time we do the show. But the Bible talks about in the Old Testament book of Job, the Rephium, and who they are. Well, it says that the Rephium are in the seas of the world, on the seas of the earth, on the water are the Rephium. And then I look up in the reference book on the Rephium, and it says these were the offspring of the gods, the offspring of the angels with humans. When humans and angels crossbreeded, the Rephium were either the offspring of this crossbreeding, or they were the ones
original
that were doing
breeders.
Crossbreeding.
Right.
And it said, but they are under the ocean. They're under the ocean, and they come out of the waters. Well, I've thought about that because I've heard stories from people who were in the Bahamas, in Nassau, and in the islands of the Caribbean, talking about the fact that they see the natives, especially the people who live there. They say that they see entities walking out of the ocean at night, glowing. They look like they could be humans, but some of them come out of the ocean.
Even right here off of, off the coast of Catalina, there's some really deep water between, Long Beach, Manhattan Beach, and Catalina Island. And there's been quite a bit of actual eyewitness events of craft leaving the ocean and zipping off into the sky at,
That's right.
phenomenal speeds. In fact, there was a very famous one that the military had documented. And, it happened right in that area. And it headed towards Redondo Beach and then just disappeared.
That's what I heard, yeah.
And there's actually, I think, some L.A. Times coverage on it in the paper.
Yeah.
I think this took place late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
And
because I've heard a lot of
There's
these.
been several eyewitness events of this type of occurrence out there.
I was talking to people in Hawaii, and I've been over there. I had an experience. I've had quite a few experiences in Hawaii, but I had one hell of an experience in Honolulu, otherworld experience. I was there with my wife and some friends. We went over in 69, 70. We were in a restaurant right across the street from the Hilton Village. And that's the main drag, the main
strip there, right?
Yeah, the main strip going into town is the Hilton Village, and then on this side was a big hotel, and in the bottom of the hotel was a restaurant. And so I was sitting with my back to the door, and my wife was sitting to my left, and our friends were sitting on the other side of the table, and somebody came in the front door, which I had my back to. Somebody came into the front door, and it hit me like an electrical shock. If someone comes up behind you with wires and you don't know they're there, and they hit you, not going to kill you. It's just 120. But the mere fact you weren't expecting it, it hit you 10 times worse. It's like hitting a little branch in a tree. But if you're not expecting it, it's like hitting a 2x4. And so whoever it was, an electrical shock went through me so powerful, I jumped and knocked food off the table, and I jumped up. And a voice said, "Run quick, you're in trouble. Your life is in danger, run." And involuntarily, I ran across the restaurant, and I ran out into the kitchen. And the voice said, "Run out the back door. Your life is in danger, run quick." I ran out the back door, and I ran out into the parking lot. And it said, "Run across the street to the hotel, the Hilton Village. Run across the street to the hotel." And I yelled out, "I can't run across the street. There's traffic." And it said, "Run across, there won't be any traffic. Run across, there will be no traffic." And involuntarily, I was doing this. I had no choice. I was involuntarily running. I had to run. And I ran right across the street, and just by chance, as I happened to be, there was no traffic. There was a break in the traffic. I ran across the street into the Hilton Village. I ran past the Japanese restaurant. I ran around the outside, and the voice told me, "Go around to the ocean side. Go around the hotel to the ocean side." So I did. I ran around, and there's a little private, it's just a natural pool, not a regular pool, natural pool of water, and a bunch of little chairs and lawn chairs, etc., on the ocean side. And the voice said, "Okay, you're safe now. Sit down. You're safe." And I sat down. I was out of breath, and had been running, and I was thinking, what in the hell did I just do? I got up and ran across a restaurant, knocked food over my wife and my friends, and I ended up over here. I don't know what the hell's going on. This is crazy. But I had no choice. It was involuntary. I had no choice. And that happened to me twice in my life. And I came back to Los Angeles, and one day I was down on Wilshire Boulevard on Fairfax. On Fairfax and Wilshire, where the old May Company used to be. Well, there's a Johnny's hamburger stand across the street on Fairfax at Wilshire. And I was sitting at the counter, and two guys walk into the front door. I didn't turn to see them. I saw in peripheral vision, I saw two guys walk in. The moment they walked in, an electrical shock hit me, and I almost fell off on the floor. I was sitting at the counter. And I grabbed money, and I tripped. When I fell off the stool, I tripped on the floor. I got up, and I put money, I just threw some money on the counter, and I ran out the side back door, and I ran up Fairfax about 3 or 4 blocks till I come to the little UN souvenir store, United Nations souvenir store. It's about 3 blocks north of there. And I ran all the way up Fairfax till I got to that little area. There was a bus stop there, and the voice said, "All right, just settle down. You're okay now. You're all right. Settle down." And so I sat down in front of that UN store. I was out of breath, and I was thinking, I don't know what the hell's wrong. What was that all about? It was involuntary. It wasn't I was told to do it, and I was stupid enough to do it. No, I was running because somebody was forcing me to do it. It was involuntary. I was just doing whatever. I was just going for the ride. And so I've had that happen to me twice.
Your sixth sense was telling you to do something.
Yeah. Whatever it was very pronounced telling me to do something. Even if you don't do it, you will do it. And so that shows me that I actually didn't have any control over my body at all. Whatever it was took over me, and I was running. Wow. It doesn't mean it was evil and bad and the devil. No, it was protecting me from something. It was protecting me. So it could have been, Christians will hear this and say, well, there it is, the devil worship, obviously the devil. No, if it was a devil, I would have known the devil. I would have known. I know evil when I see it. I see it in churches all the time, so I know evil when I see it. But no, this was protecting me. It was like a guardian angel protecting me from something that I did not have the capacity to deal with. So it told me to run, get out of the way, run quick. So that's scary.
Yeah, big time.
I don't know what it was that those guys, who they were. I'll tell you what I think. This is just my subjective thought about it. I've thought about this for many years, and there's no doubt in my mind that what happened both in Hawaii and in Los Angeles, of me running away and the voice telling me, run quick, your life is in danger, I am totally convinced for myself that there are extraterrestrials, or what we call, or what have been called by government, EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, EBE. And these extraterrestrial biological entities are biological creatures, but they have the ability to take on human forms. They can look like humans if they want. And if that's true, there's no doubt in my mind that there's different ones are here from different places in the universe. Some have come from far out, some have come from near. But out there, some of those entities out there are enemies with each other. But they come down here. And when they come down here, they're bringing their enemies, they're bringing the feud here. Same thing if you get a gang from one gang and there's a total enemy of another gang, but they happen to meet in New Jersey. It doesn't matter. It's still our rival gangs. So,
like totally Men in Black.
Right. So that's why I think that what was happening is that I have been, from a long time ago, involved with some, for lack of a better term, extraterrestrials who have been protecting me, guiding me, making sure I learn what I'm supposed to and meet who I'm supposed to, and ultimately to do whatever it is I'm supposed to do, whatever that is. And I was told, you'll know what it is when it comes time.
Well, even in the biblical sense, they're called your guardian angels.
Exactly.
And they're out there.
And the Bible's filled with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, in the 18th chapter of Genesis, go back and read Genesis 18 chapter and the 19th chapter, where it talks about Abraham and Sarah and the three men that come walking up into the camp. It says three men come walking up into the camp, and the three men turns out to be angels. And the three men sat down and had dinner. Abraham had Sarah, his wife, fix dinner for them. After dinner, the three men decided they were on their way someplace. Well, it says two men got up and left, and the other man that stayed there a little longer with Abraham, the Bible says, was the Almighty God, the Creator. The Almighty God, the Creator himself, was sitting under a tree having dinner with Abraham. That's what the Bible says. And then if you read in Genesis 1, the first and second chapter, when it talks about God created Adam and Eve, that's a whole subject we'll get into another time. That's going to take us 2 hours to get into that. But it's interesting, it says in the Bible that God walked with Adam in the cool of the evening. Well, the word walk with is a Hebrew word which is translated to mean the hearing leaves and branches being stepped on. It means when you hear somebody stepping behind you on branches or leaves, somebody's behind you. All right? And that's what the Hebrew word walking with God. So when it says God walked with Adam, well, the word means walking on leaves and bushes and branches so you can hear them. So what the Bible is saying is that there was somebody actually there in the garden walking with him. Well, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we look forward to getting into that chapter.
Yeah, that's going to be 90 minutes. I want to talk about that. Who actually? I'll give you a teaser on this. We're going to talk about this next time. God did not create man. There's no place in the Bible that says God created man. Period. A very high-ranking rabbi many years ago, one of the leading rabbis in America, was my dear friend back in the 60s, and I remember him telling me, he said, nowhere in the Bible does it say God created man. Nowhere. So don't go, he said, I know Jews are talking about it, and Christians will tell you God created man. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. It doesn't say that at all. God did not create man. And I said, would you please explain that to me? He said, yeah, I'll be happy to. But I'm going to save that to the next time.
Excellent. We look forward to that
because
one.
In order to get into it, I'm going to have to explain to you what the words mean, what they meant in Hebrew, and why we know God did not create man. That's a whole subject for another time.
We'll definitely look forward to that one.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about the topics we speak about on this program, you can find most of the books about these subjects on Amazon.com. Just bookmark our homepage, and when you need to buy something, I mean anything, go to our homepage, click on the Amazon link, shop, and Amazon supports us. Simple, and you will not be charged 1 penny more. We appreciate the support.